ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول كل بدعة ضلالة.
Moving from there to the issue of hijrah, our Shaykh has shown us that hijrah goes on. And the Messenger ﷺ told us that hijrah goes on. So that means there is always going to be the possibility of a Muslim leaving a kafir land and moving to a Muslim land as an act of worship to Allah Azza wa Jal, to live amongst the Muslims and to avoid all of the hardships that come with living in the land of the disbelievers. At times that becomes an obligation, and when the scholars mention this is an obligation, is when a person cannot manifest his religion, the basics of his religion. He cannot manifest, he cannot bring out in the open his religion, rather he has to hide, and he faces persecution or punishment or something if he practices Islam. In such a case, it's an obligation on people who are capable of leaving, and those who are incapable, then they are excused, and Allah Ta'ala doesn't burden a soul beyond its scope. So then the games of the modern Ikhwanis can become clear to you. The people say to you, we are facing difficulty in practicing Islam, and the non-Muslims are putting pressure on the Muslims, and they're trying to, as they say right now, there is an Ikhwani movement to scare you and say the kuffar are trying to ban the Sharia. Have you heard this? The kuffar are trying to ban the Sharia. Where is the Sharia in America being implemented so for it to be banned in the first place? It's not here being established for it to be banned. It's not in effect in America. It's not in place in America as a ruling system for it to be banned. But yet they say they're trying to ban the Sharia. And Allah knows best what the intended goal of banning a system of ruling which is not even in place. But we're being told that because they're banning the Sharia, or because they're doing this, or they're putting pressure on Muslims politically, and we have to band together, we have to drop our points of differing, and we have to come together because we're facing the enemies all coming together against Islam, so we have to be united as we have never been before, or drop all reasons why we would differ and separate. And the goal here, in reality, you know the life that you live, you know the pressure on you, or that's not on you when you practice your religion. There's nothing there that's dangerous that's requiring you to stand next to a Shi'i who hates your mother Aisha and pretend to love him so that you can vote for some person who can give you some concession within the government, to give you some tax break or whatever it is that the politically inclined Ikhwanis are trying to do. What we understand from this issue of hijrah is that if things did get so difficult on us, then Allah has legislated for us hijrah, not ikhwaniyya. Not that we all get together and stop enjoining the good and stop forbidding the evil, because that is a pathway that leads us into the punishment of Allah, not away from hardships and difficulties, but into the punishment of Allah. So Allah has not legislated for us to stop refuting evil and stop rejecting evil so that we can become together upon false unity, just to, live safely amongst non-Muslims. The Messenger ﷺ lived under the rule of non-Muslims in Mecca, and he was persecuted, and his companions were persecuted. Yet the haqq remained the haqq, and there was no compromise. And then when it became too difficult, Allah gave him permission to make hijrah. And likewise, every Muslim who lives in the land of the non-Muslims, he practices his religion, and he doesn't compromise the foundations of his religion, the basics of his religion. He practices them, and he doesn't allow them to be twisted and perverted. And he speaks when he is able to speak about the purity of his religion. And if things become too difficult and he cannot do that, then his religion permits him to make hijrah and to leave that land and go to a place where either he is less persecuted or that he can practice Islam with the Muslims in a Muslim country. So either things are okay and you can practice your religion, so you may remain under non-Muslim rule, or things are too difficult and it's too much of a hardship to practice your religion, so you migrate from that land. There's no middle course where you begin to give up your religion and compromise to the disbelievers, or that you begin to adopt democracy so that you now take another system of how you interact with your rulers, and you lose the system of Islam, and you join hands with Ikhwanis and so on. There's no middle ground there that has been legislated for us. There is either remaining patient upon your religion and it's allowed and it's not too harsh, too difficult for you, or if it's too difficult for you and things are too harsh for you, then you make hijrah from that land. That's ongoing. What the Ikhwanis want to do is nullify that hijrah. Because if you can get the hijrah out of the options, then you must stay. No matter how difficult it gets, you must stay. And they like it when it gets difficult, because that means you have to stop forbidding the evil, and you have to stop enjoining the good, and you have to stop standing up for the truth, and you start melting the truth in with falsehood, as is their way and as is their methodology. So they want you to join with them in their methodology. If they can cancel hijrah as an option, then that's what they'll get. When things get difficult, you can't make hijrah. So what do? You have to start giving up things in your religion, you have to start compromising, you have to start joining the ranks of the Ikhwanis, and you have to start becoming politically orientated and satisfying the politicians and so on. And you end up losing a lot of your religion. Rather, we say hijrah has not been cancelled, and hijrah is ongoing. And if things get difficult living in the land of the non-Muslims, then you make hijrah and leave the land of the non-Muslims. One of the primary figures that are promoting this idea is Yasir Qadhi of recent times, the one known as Yasir Qadhi. He's promoting this idea of becoming engaged in the political system and becoming engaged in Western life and not making hijrah. And he boasts and he says openly that he's American and he's patriotic and he's a proud patriotic American and his grandchildren are going to die in America, speaking like that without even saying inshallah.
I am an American Muslim. Whether my uncle likes it or not, whether somebody appreciates this or not, this is my heritage. For me, brothers and sisters, for me, home is not where my grandfather came from. It is where my grandchildren are going to be buried. And for me, this land is my home.
He's so dedicated to being an American and he's pushing this idea on people. Can you imagine yourself saying right now, boldly and with confidence, that my grandchildren will die in this land, as if to speak with honor about your attachment to this country? Is there any Muslim who would want to talk like that? Wouldn't you like to say, I hope that my children would make it to the lands of the Muslims and live good lives with the Muslim countries? I don't have any reason to say my children should stay all their lives in this land and my grandchildren should stay here. But rather, I hope that, they would be blessed to go live in the lands of the Muslims. Yet this is what he promotes, that he is a true American and a proud patriotic American, and his grandchildren will die in this land, and boasting and bragging about that. May Allah Ta'ala give us better.